What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Alpha First for another Tuesday episode with Brian and Santiment. We're going to dive into the market here. And, it's been a rough few days and a really rough overnight that we had, but maybe the market's starting to turn. So Brian's going to share some words of wisdom and some great analysis from Santiment. How you doing today, Brian?
Good, Josh. Yeah, it's obviously a bit of a bummer of a time for crypto right now, but that's part of the swing of things. And we'll look into exactly why the occurrences are what they are right now and what is likely, or at least a better than 50% likely, probable around the corner for markets based on where we're at and how much pain there is.
Well, I definitely like those odds. More than 50% likely is what I like to hear right about now. I'm sure everybody else too.
Absolutely. So I'll share my screen here and we'll look at kind of the bloodbath that's going on and try to identify some of the indicators that are standing out at the moment. I'd like to begin by kind of looking at some of the on-chains for Bitcoin, because especially when we see a retrace like this, everything is going to start with the number one market cap in crypto. And based on the on-chain metrics, not surprised at all to see we're starting to pick up a little bit in transaction volume. And keep in mind the $27.7 billion so far in on-chain volume isn't even a complete day yet. We still got 5 hours left on the UTC time clock at the time of this live stream. And it's easily the best, or at least highest, day of utility in about 3 weeks. So that's a good sign that we're seeing a lot of polarization in the markets right now. We want to be seeing a bit of an uptick. Looking at stuff like daily active addresses, pretty underwhelming so far. Token circulation is at least up a little bit, kind of at that same 3-week high level as we saw on-chain transaction volume. And then here's the metric that I'm really keeping a close eye on right now. This is the average trading returns of just any wallet that's been active in either the past 30 days here in orange or 365 days here in teal. Ideally, the best buy opportunities, or bottom indicators, if you will, are when both of these lines are below 0%. So here, for example, at the beginning of September, we saw average trading returns for 30-day wallets at about negative 9.5%. 365-day was at about negative 6.5%, both well underwater, indicating that if you were to buy right now, you'd be doing so while much of the pain has already happened. Not just a 10% retrace from an all-time high or 20%. That part doesn't matter. What really matters is crypto's a zero-sum game. This is essentially how your competition is doing. We may, vast majority of us may be on the bullish side of things, but it doesn't mean there aren't people constantly taking profit where they shouldn't, buying dips where they shouldn't. And due to all of that irrationality, that's how we end up with, a year where Bitcoin has soared, yet, the average trading returns are over the past year is literally plus 4.5%. So I like the look of this, especially if we trickle down below zero, which could happen literally by the end of the day. But this is one of the best arguments for why it looks like we are starting to hit a zone that is showing a high probability of a bounce.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is what I'm talking about when I mention max pain, because this is when the market is feeling max pain. And this is when I like to buy. It goes back to Warren Buffett saying, buy when there's blood in the streets. And this is exactly that moment. So buying now, DCA now, not a bad idea in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is, especially on the 30-day end, it's literally the most pain we've seen since that moment. In fact, I think it just crossed below. So we'd have to literally go to the past year to find a point. It might take a little while to load. If I just make this 1 hour, that'll be easier. Good enough. So yeah, we would have to go back to August, 7 months ago, the last time we saw a dip of this size in terms of average returns. So we all know that beginning of August was a pretty nice time to buy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could see quite an epic bounce from these levels after we finally start to recover. So
Yeah, and some people think this is like an automatic buy signal. Again, we deal with probabilities. Understand if something is 75% likely to occur, that means 1 out of 4 times it won't. So consider this to be like a pretty good opportunity zone, but certainly not like a historic one. For example, August, we still dropped like another 5 to 10% from that same similar drop. If we go back to the FTX collapse, obviously markets dropped by over 50%. If you go all the way to Black Thursday during the beginning of COVID, markets dropped over 50%. And I'm just talking about Bitcoin. I know it was much worse for altcoins. So, yeah, average trading returns are at least looking better than they have in a long time if you're looking for an opportunity window to begin to DCA, as Josh said. Um, and looking at funding rates, pretty neutral right now. We'd love to start seeing, a lot of people shorting, and they are for like Solana. If there's time, we can check out Solana's a few of their metrics. But the sentiment-driven ones, like meme coins or like any asset where traders tend to get a little more emotional, like Cardano, even Chainlink. Those are the ones where we're starting to see some people trying to profit off of markets going down. And that's actually a good sign that we would be capitulating on those assets and those liquidations of those shorts, because whenever we see extremes in either direction, like there or there, they tend to get liquidated and the price will get a little bit of boost in the opposite direction when that occurs. So we'd be hoping for the crowd and your fellow trading peers, if you're watching, to be against crypto right now and believe that this is just the beginning. And if the whole crowd believes this is just the beginning, it almost guarantees that it's actually the end.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's nice to see them start to short, because typically they don't believe it's going to actually happen. Then it starts to happen. They're like, oh, it's going to recover soon. And then, you wake up like you do today. And you're like, all right, screw it. I'm finally going to short the market. Well, you're already too late. The
Yep.
money you could have made is already gone.
Exactly. If you're actually trying to successfully short the markets, you want to be doing it while we've been seeing an extended green candle, like in November or December. But if you're waiting until we've retraced 20%, and then you're like, oh, yeah, I guess markets can go down, I should start betting in favor of that. You're already too late. Exactly as you said. And, speaking of like actually quantifying how the sentiment is, we definitely have plenty of metrics on that where we can see tangibly, like, are traders beginning to show an extreme level of FUD? And the answer is absolutely. We're seeing very, very negative commentary toward all of the top caps. These are the 4 largest non-stable coins in crypto: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, all at their most negative commentary across social media in at least the past 6 months. I think maybe there was one other time in the past year where we saw similar. And that was, of course, a very good bounce opportunity also. So when looking at the ratio, we're just dividing any commentary that's considered positive and any commentary that's considered negative across X, Reddit, Telegram, 4chan, Bitcoin Talk, and Farcaster. We're dividing those together. The lower the ratio, that means there's a big bias toward negativity. You can see very tiny in these corners, these numbers. 1.11 means there's about 1.1 positive comments for every 1 negative comment. That's essentially dead even. And that's super rare because all social media and all conversations about crypto tend to veer bullish bias from like anywhere between like a 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1 ratio. So the fact that we're like dead even practically in Bitcoin, and this is actually under 1, 0.92 means there's 0.92 positive comments for every 1 negative comment for Ethereum. People are livid at Ethereum because, unlike these other 3, Ethereum's been kind of underperforming for about a year and a half now relative to them. So no wonder people are so negative on Ethereum. And that, again, is a good sign that we are close, if not already there, to a bottom.
Yeah. I like seeing everybody bearish. It just means a good time for us ultimately, and you've got the data to back up why that means it's a good time for us. But it's quite interesting that it's been a long time since this has happened. I'm really curious to see, like, maybe I'll have to pull it up next week or something, or we'll have to pull it up next week. But like, what has happened when sentiment has dropped so low in the
Mhm.
past?
Yeah, I mean, more often than not, it's a good bounce situation. I didn't prep like examples for this call, but trust me when I tell you, we have more than enough examples that really tangibly show that when people start spamming the word sell, there's a much higher probability of prices bouncing. When people start spamming, buy or Lambo or to the moon, stuff like that, tends to be where we see a lot of tops. So keep that in mind. Again, it's not going to be a perfect science, but again, it's like a degree of probability goes way up when you see that the rest of anytime like the majority of the crowd starts to skew extremely in one direction, like we're seeing now, it really maximizes the likelihood of the opposite scenario coming to fruition.
Yeah, especially when we're in the middle of a bull market. We're not done with this cycle yet. So I think it makes even more sense that that analysis will play out the way that you mentioned. You know.
Yeah, I mean it's tough to say. Everyone has different definitions of what the cycles are and what a bull market is defined as. I tend to be very neutral on that subject, and when prices have gone up 30% in a month, yeah, it's pretty easy to say, okay, we're clearly in a bull cycle of some type. But you also, I, I don't think anyone's opinion is wrong, but from my perspective, if you're someone who just convinces yourself that we're in a bull cycle, therefore you can't sell anything, or we're in a bear cycle, therefore you can't buy anything, it sometimes becomes a bit of a trap, um, because we we've only been in crypto's existed for roughly 16 years, a little under, and it's just not enough of a sample size to say, all right, when a bull market has got, or when prices have gone up for 4 months straight, that means it's going to at least go up for 2 more months because of 2021 and 2017. And I just think we need like 10 times more amount of years to go by before we have enough of a sample size to just be like, this is always going to happen on a bull cycle, always going to happen on a bear cycle. We're just in such a fickle situation with, the political landscape very polarized here in the US. World conflicts are very prevalent right now. Financial polarization and inequality is kind of at its highest in a long time. So there's a lot of real world factors that can throw a big cog into the spokes of the wheel at any time.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. And it's kind of like when we were getting into the bull market, as some people would say it started last year. Like George, for example, of Cryptos R Us, he was saying quite often that we are in a bear trend within the bull market, right? So
Mm.
it
Mhm.
kind of goes in line with what you're saying. It's a trend within because we don't have enough data. Like when people are pointing out analysis for the stock market, it could go back 100 years that they're
Yeah.
pulling this data from.
Great point. Yeah, I agree with you and George, really. But even in a massive bull market like we saw, at least between November and basically the day that Trump got elected to the day that he got inaugurated, that was one of the best 2.5 month stretches we saw in pretty much since 2021. And even then, we saw plenty of days where, we got mini retraces to shake out a few weak hands who would sell right here. And then they'd buy back in right here because they're convinced that we're back on bull market territory. And then they'll sell again right here when we see a mini dip. So you get the idea. There's just a lot of irrationality and jagged edges within any bull market that is still going to test people's confidence.
Yeah, definitely. I like to call those fair weather fans.
Yes, exactly. When things are going well, best investment of my life. When things are going poorly, how did I get so unlucky? It's
Right.
the
Yes.
common narrative that goes out there.
Totally agree. I see it all the time.
Yeah. So what I'm showing here, by the way, is kind of a macro glimpse of how whales and sharks are behaving right now. The green line, in my opinion, is the most important one. This is just the total amount of Bitcoin held by all of the wallets that exist on Bitcoin's network that hold at least 10 BTC. So in other words, we're talking about the smaller end sharks that are holding, I guess as of now, about $850,000, 10 times whatever Bitcoin's current price is, which is about 86K. And that goes all the way up to the largest, Satoshi wallets that have been abandoned or are on exchange addresses, whatever the case is. This is all of them combined, and just how much Bitcoin is within those that hold at least 860K. Right now, at least for most of the past 6 months, it's been just a constant uptrend, more and more accumulation. Even here, like when they take a break, they're not really going down much. And then, Trump's inauguration is coming up. They start accumulating like crazy. And it keeps on going up and up and up until we get to February 19th, which was last Thursday. And right here, they started to actually take a little profit. It's not a lot. This isn't like a scary sign of a huge dump, but they did drop collectively about a little over 6,000 Bitcoin since that time, which is going to be worth it's in the billions, or close to it, right around there. And markets have dropped immediately once they started that, like literally on the nose when they started to dump. That's when Bitcoin's prices retraced by roughly 11% or so, if not a little bit more than that. So clearly the smart money or the key stakeholders are having an impact, just like they had a positive impact when they were accumulating like crazy as soon as Trump got elected, and even before, when they assumed he would get elected, they were accumulating. So it goes both ways. We'll be watching this line very closely over the next week to see if it, starts to flatten out or potentially comes back up. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a quick rebound now that Bitcoin is on sale for the mid to high 80Ks for the first time in 3 months, over 3 months. So we could literally see them accumulate this small gap by tomorrow and get all their Bitcoin back. And this was all part of their grand plan for all we know. So that's a very minor worrisome sign. We don't want to see whales and sharks ever moving their collective Bitcoin down. And the other minor sign that I'd be a bit cautious about is the fact that the smart money stablecoin wallets, which we deem between $100K to $10 million based on some back testing, they're moving down as well. Tether has essentially gone from 29% held by these smart money wallets to about 21.5%, which is a pretty significant amount of supply that's either moved into the very massive exchange wallets or into the retail hands, mostly the retail hands, I guarantee it. And USD coin is kind of doing that as well. So long story short, we want to see all of these lines moving up over time. It made sense that stable coins were being swapped for Bitcoin during this big bull stretch. But now that we see things moving down, we should be seeing Tether and USD coin at least going up. If they're all going down together, that means whales and sharks are literally just taking their money out of crypto altogether.
Right. Now, I do have a question. How low are you comfortable with seeing the 10 to infinity coin holders go before you start getting concerned?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've got a direct comparison I can show you from the last time traders were in a huge amount of pain. That was 2022. So if I just take off these axis restrictions, I'll take these stablecoin lines off too. So we make it nice and clear. So February 2022, literally exactly just about 3 years ago from today.
Yeah.
They were holding about 16.24 million based on that top left bubble on my screen when I'm hovering right here. Since that time, they dropped over the next, call it 6 months, I should say. They were then holding 16.08 million. So they dropped roughly 155 to 160,000 Bitcoin over that 6-month stretch. And what a coincidence, Bitcoin dropped just about 50% over that time. They then dropped even further. So from February until like the end of the year in 2022, they dropped a total of 344,000 Bitcoin. And even though Bitcoin wasn't worth as much as it is today, that's tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. And Bitcoin dropped about 55% or so from that peak when they started to dump. So really, as a rough rule of thumb, if they're dumping more than like, let's say 500 Bitcoin per day over whatever amount of time stretch you're looking at, that's a concern. If it's mostly just flat like this, like anything can happen. It means that Bitcoin's just going to be really unpredictable and kind of dictated by all of the bull and bear retail battles that are going on. But if they suddenly dump like crazy here, granted, this was very much related to all the FTX liquidations, so it's not the best example, but you just don't want to see a sustained period like we saw in 2022. And this is, I mean, for perspective, now that you see the past 4 years all at once, this is barely a blip on the radar right now, which is why it's just kind of like a very short-term concern that is apparently already kind of baked in because we dropped to 87.7K as of now over the past 5 days of dumping, very small by the whales and sharks.
Yeah, you actually can't even tell that their holdings are dropping when you're on this chart.
Makes you feel a little bit better, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That
question answered. Yeah, I guess if we see it drop, like, start to straight line down or stair step down, then we maybe are a little bit concerned. But right now, when you were zoomed in a bit more, it looks like it's just going to have a rounded bottom, like you were saying.
Exactly. And there are like weird anomalies that may happen. I remember there was a certain tier, like the 100 to 1000 tier had like this huge drop around like July or August, whenever they did the Mount Gox liquidations, and the trustee was moving at like hundreds of millions of dollars. There was like this huge drop, and I saw it, and we talked about it as a team at Santiment, and we kind of figured it out, and we're like, thank God. We thought there was just like a mass dump that had suddenly taken effect when it was actually just a bunch of wallet reshufflings. So you can't ever rule that out, considering the anonymity of crypto and the limited info that we sometimes have. But if it's like sustained for long enough, you can pretty much get the picture that there's some actual dumping going on for the purpose of lowering prices. And that's when you got to be a little bit concerned.
Definitely. Yeah.
So what else? We talked about a lot of the on-chain stuff for Bitcoin. We can also look at like the social trends for a moment. Oh, I know what I can show. I put this out yesterday, and I think it's a really cool visual for how much, there we go. It's taking a while to load. This shows how much 8 of the largest individuals that impact crypto really do impact crypto. So each of these charts that are different colors indicate the social volume that these 8 individuals here had over the past year. So the very top chart, CZ Binance, April 30th, 2024, he got sentenced to 4 months in prison for money laundering. Biggest social spike. Makes sense. Everyone's talking about him. And he had already left Binance like a year earlier, so there wasn't as much talk about him up until this point. That had kind of a bounce effect on the markets because everyone got negative. Most people perceive CZ as kind of a beloved figure. Not everybody, but many do. And so when someone who people like has something bad happen to them in crypto, it causes retail panic, and then whales and sharks are able to scoop up a bunch of coins that the retail selling and they push up prices. Same thing happened July 13th. Donald Trump, who was the favored presidential candidate, regardless of your politics, most of crypto were rooting for him because he was quite vocal about his pro-crypto stance that he would be implementing. So Trump assassination attempt, people freak out. Markets initially go down, but then we go on one of the biggest runs over the next few months that we've ever seen, partially triggered by Elon Musk being mentioned as a potential advisory position, which I guess we can state pretty clearly kind of came to fruition. So that helped out prices in a hurry and really turned things around. You know, Gensler being speculated to be on the way out the night that Trump was elected. Trump and Gensler, of course, had two of their biggest spikes in the past year on the night Trump was elected. Saylor and MicroStrategy announced a huge Bitcoin purchase a few weeks after that. And we're just seeing more and more up and up and up as these big news events come out. Now, these are just manually researched ones where I basically cross-referenced the volume spikes of these people to the news event that happened. But there are plenty of other like mini stories. I guarantee if we went back to these exact dates, there were reasons why Trump was getting a huge amount of social volume, or, you know, Gensler had a huge impact right here that caused a top perfectly when it happened. So point is, you can find a lot of really cool alpha just by looking up prominent individuals within crypto, or looking up, you know, how often people are mentioning bull cycle versus bear cycle and kind of using that as a counter indicator. It's really cool. And I'm kind of just researching the tip of the iceberg right now, but you guys are welcome to check it out. This is totally free, by the way. You don't even have to be a member to use this stuff.
Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah. This is a really cool chart. I like how you did it, and having the different, you know, contributing factors or people in there.
Thanks,
It's funny. Yeah. It's funny that Armstrong really doesn't make an impact whatsoever. But
yeah, I was surprised by that. I threw him in there. I'm like, he has to be one of the most important people, and there really aren't too many impacts, which he's probably happy about. I mean, to be a top 5 exchange and have your name actually not be circulating in the news the way like CZ and a few of the, you know, obviously SBF, he's probably pretty happy to just make his money and be under the radar. That's every CEO's dream, I think.
Right.
Most,
yeah, can't get better than that with crypto emerging in the United States and nobody talks about them. You know, they're still the biggest.
It's a really good sign. So there, I mean, I'm not going to be a proponent or an adversary against any exchanges, but he seems to be doing something right within the community's eyes, at least.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Not surprised to see Elon and all the effect he has, though. I mean, he can change his name and 10,000 meme coins come out.
So. Yeah. I mean, he's someone who likes the attention, clearly. I don't think he wants to be under the radar the way some of these other people do.
Yeah. And it kind of, looking at the chart, it kind of, you know, reminds you too that the bullish price structure that we were seeing in January stopped when we stopped having bullish catalysts, you know. So it's been since inauguration that we haven't had a bullish catalyst.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's interesting because there's sometimes like a buy the rumor, sell the news effect. But when it's objectively scary news, like, you know, the latest one I have on here is Jerome Powell halting US interest rates on about 4 weeks ago. And that pretty much was the top. That was essentially the last time we were flirting with 100K Bitcoin, and we've been kind of scaling down ever since. So we do need to see some more good news, which, you know, knowing we're in a pro crypto administration, we'll probably see pretty soon.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's right around the corner here. There's a lot of things coming up. You know, the economy's slowing down a little bit. Maybe we'll get some rate cuts here soon. They're still calling for a few this year, so that could definitely help.
And that's a really good point, by the way. I mean, let's not forget, this isn't just an isolated crypto retrace. This is pretty much coinciding with an entire world economy mild retrace that's going on. And we can compare just by looking at the S&P 500 here in teal, Bitcoin in green, and gold in gold. For some reason, gold's price is lagging, but that's the least important one. We'll just look at the S&P in gold, and it's showing, if I refresh here, no idea why it's actually a week. That's so interesting. I've never seen it do that. I'm sorry, guys. Usually you'll see it in real time as of the past hour, but I can essentially tell you that the S&P is more or less doing that. And crypto and equities are essentially fluctuating in tandem right now. And that's actually somewhat of a relief because it's telling us this isn't like an isolated crypto crash that the rest of the investing community is being insulated from. We're all kind of going down together at the same time. And if world markets begin to recover a little bit, and we do know that Trump values the overall health of the S&P 500 a lot. So if he's focusing on turning this around and he's successful, I'd be surprised if Bitcoin and the rest of crypto doesn't follow suit.
Yeah, definitely. I could say, from what I've heard anyways and what I've read, he is not happy with how markets are performing right now. And that's what he puts a lot of weight on, like you mentioned. So I agree, though. It is reassuring to see that happen. That's actually why I'm hopeful that the Nvidia earnings come out just way over, and maybe that'll be enough to send markets the other direction.
Yeah, I don't follow Nvidia as much as many people here do, but it's been on just an unbelievable run, and some people are saying how much more sustainable can this get? But they just quarter after quarter they seem to overperform, and I think a lot of people are hoping that continues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've had some good earnings calls that actually, ended up pumping crypto for not really much of a reason. I can understand like AI projects or something like that, but
it's the mining, right? That's a big aspect of it.
Yeah, mining and basically AI chips. So, makes sense that it'll impact AI, but I think a lot of miners are using proprietary chips and stuff like that. But anyways, that's beside the point.
Yeah. No, it's all super interesting. And, I think this will be probably one of the biggest indicators. Like if we start to see the S&P, even just have a minor bounce and you see that crypto hasn't reacted yet, that's a pretty good sign that you're finding at least a mini bull divergence that you can capitalize on. So I'd watch how the overall US stock market or any world stock market that fluctuates similarly. Asian markets can be helpful too because they react before the S&P due to time zones, and you might find that they're starting to bounce overnight here in the US, and you can take advantage.
Yeah, definitely, especially like MetaPlanet now. They're basically trying to be the Asia's strategy or MicroStrategy. So they just bought, I think, another 135 Bitcoin yesterday. So obviously we bled out all night, but hey, maybe they have a big bounce and we follow.
Yeah, exactly. I'm checking right now to see. Yeah, there was that big spike yesterday when they announced MicroStrategy announced that they were purchasing a big bundle more. And this was actually the highest level of discussion since December 2nd. So just about a 2.5, almost 3-month high in terms of discussions about them. They're definitely a big, bull signal when they're announcing confidence in their own investment in crypto. A lot of people follow and feel better about the markets shortly after.
Yeah, and I think ironically too, both of those large spikes that you pointed out are about $2 billion buys. So
yeah,
that gets attention.
I'm not shocked. And the last thing, I'm sure we can do a few more things, but the last thing I had prepared was this template here, indicating the overall mentions of relatively low prices, which were actually below now, which is funny. 90 to 95K Bitcoin, which was below kind of that range period we were in from 96 to 100 for a while. And then 110 to 115, which we've never actually seen. So as you would imagine, the red is a signal of greed because people are talking about and dreaming about prices we've never seen. Very often we'll see these spikes and dreams of super high prices coinciding with the top. And then I can actually change these now for the first time. I'll make them very simply 80 to 85K really quick. And we'll see how the frequency is looking based on how people are speculating markets are going to go. I guarantee there's going to be a bit. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So there you go. That was a happy accident. We're having a massive spike. I'll probably have to write about this now after the call. A massive spike in mentions of 80 to 85, despite us not really being in that territory. Maybe we barely crossed into 85, the high 85s, if I'm not mistaken. So sure, I get why maybe there's a little bit of a jump in discussions, but this high indicates that people are speculating for super low numbers. And maybe I'll do a few different screenshots on a post coming up later today on our Santiment feed X account that you guys can check out. And it's probably going to show that there's just a lot of speculation for lower prices because people are freaking out. They're just like, oh, I don't think Bitcoin's going to bounce until it hits 60K or 40K, or get ready for another 2022. I'm already seeing a lot of that across social media. And again, that's a good sign at the end of the day. You want your fellow retail traders to be in full on panic mode.
I love how that sounds when you say it though. But yeah, I mean, even in live stream, in the morning we'll have somewhere around 6,000-7,000 people watching and chatting. And this morning especially, I saw hundreds of comments about we're going to 45. I don't even know where they got that number from, but apparently we're going there. My main concern that I've seen actual validation for is actually like low 80, high 79, because there's a CME gap there, but we'll see what happens.
Interesting. Yeah, I like hearing predictions when there's some actual tangible reasoning behind it instead of just people liking a round number. But that's the thing. You never know with all those people in your chat or anywhere. I'm sure your community is full of ethical and nice people, along with some that maybe aren't. And we have the same thing at Santiment. But you never know if people are saying 45K because they actually believe it, or they just want other people to believe it so they can sell their coins to them, And especially people who have massive followings, they have a lot of power and responsibility in that to, if they are going to make market calls and tell people when to buy or sell, like there's a lot of ethics behind that in terms of whether they're just trying to manipulate their own audience or if they truly believe it and they're just trying to give their knowledge to, their loyal followers. It's why we don't make predictions. We just tell you, based on where we're at, higher probability of this or higher probability of that, but we don't know. We're not magicians. We just go with the math most of the time.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of how we like to do it as well. Not here to tell the future.
Exactly. It's okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a bad idea to make a few calls and say a likely number that we're going to fall to or top out at. But at least having the asterisk of, telling people that it's not investment advice, you're doing so at your own risk, and anything can happen based on the news changing on a dime, right? Because we're only going off of what we know in the world right now. But if like a war breaks out in some part of the world tomorrow, that flushes all of our analysis out the window and changes the entire game. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but you get my point.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point too, because, of course, war breaking out, typically we consider that black swan. Nobody sees it coming. It has huge impact on markets globally. Right. But what about war ending? What kind of impact do you think that would have? Because currently we're talking about Ukraine and Russia potentially ending.
Yeah, I mean, I remember early 2022 is when it was first announced, and there was like a 2-week retrace, not a huge one, but like Bitcoin dropped about 15%, and people were definitely getting worried. It was still pretty fresh after Black Thursday, which was just 2 years before that, and that was a massive drop, and the biggest crisis we had seen prior to the war announcement. So people were starting to compare it to Black Thursday, saying, all right, we're going all the way back to 3K or 4K at the time. And that obviously didn't come close to happening. But as time went on, people started to, unless they lived in Ukraine and Russia, they started to kind of put it at the back of their minds and move on and think about other stuff like, the 2024 election in the US and just other things. If a war is resolved, I guess it depends on the severity of how much it's impacting the world at the time that it's ending. So, like, if you're in an area where the Ukraine and Russia conflict is having serious ramifications, you know, that can affect your world economy or country's economy a lot. And if your country's economy is a big contributor to crypto, then it probably will have a pretty positive contribution to crypto because people are no longer, setting their money in a vault somewhere and fearing for the apocalypse, because people sometimes justifiably are going to react that way when a war is happening right outside their window. So I think it's no doubt a positive anytime a war ends anywhere for the world economy. We still have the ongoing Hamas and Israel issues going on, even though those have kind of diffused a little for the time being. And I think that probably had a bit of a positive contribution to the rally that we saw in December and January when that news was coming out. So, yeah, I think we undoubtedly would see some positive impact toward crypto if the Ukraine-Russia conflict came to an end.
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially with, Russia also is getting more pro Bitcoin. They're implementing government mining and all this other stuff. So, that could be yet another potential positive catalyst that we'll have coming up here.
Totally.
It seems like it's likely that it will end soon here. How soon? Nobody knows.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely don't want war. And I don't like to make my bets based upon war either, but it's still a factor to consider. But
100%.
I think, is that about all you had that you wanted to go over today?
I think so, yeah. But by all means, if there's any final topics, we can discuss.
I'm just checking out chat here, but yeah, I mean, I love everything that you showed. I mean, it looks like more things are pointing towards a positive direction at this point than a negative direction, anyways. So hopefully we see that continue, and who knows, maybe this time next week we'll be talking about something a whole different angle at that point. But checking out chat to see what they're going on about. Tony Corona says, tough question. Your opinion, what would be a good DCA approach? I mean, DCA approach can be as simple as you've got $100 a month and you put in $25 a week. There is no right or wrong way to DCA.
Yeah, and there's two ways to DCA too, because that's the most common way. Just do it by time, but you can also do it by price and just scale it down by, let's say, $1,000. If you've got, let's say you have $100 and you want to break it into 10 $10 bullets, you can just say, all right, $10 limit buy at 86K, $10 at 85K, and do that all the way down to 76K, assuming you believe that that would be the ultimate bottom, which I guess there are arguments for that, because that was that initial all-time high that just it was broken in November, if I'm not mistaken, when Trump was elected, and it was like a 3-year long standing all-time high. So just an idea, not investment advice, but 76K is probably a support level that a lot of people are mentioning. And you could just scale it every $1,000 down from there with $10 of your $100.
Yeah, I like to do like a hybrid approach, throughout the month I'll DCA into stuff, but then I also set limit orders, like you're mentioning. That way, sometimes they're extremely bizarre ones too. You never know, you might get a scam lick and hopefully I get that buy. But I like to follow kind of both methods because, hey, if price is going down and you're asleep, why not pick it up too?
Great point.
But let's see, anything else here? People are still buying optimism. Market makers will do what's best for them. Yes, they will. Yeah, it looks
everybody
like
does what's best for them.
Yeah, and that's what people don't realize when it comes to market makers and exchanges. They get paid by liquidating everybody. So at the end of the day, the casino wins.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's probably about it for today, Brian. I think everybody's a little bit quiet today, probably just listening in, not wanting to get involved too much because they're just bummed out about the market. But
Can't
don't
blame
get
'em.
yeah, can't blame them for sure. But it's definitely not time to give up. That's for certain. A lot of good things are coming.
I think so too. It's all about patience right now, and just try to bear with wherever this volatility takes us for the next few weeks. If it does take that long to start to even out again and look better.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't take that long, but hey, we never know. So we'll have to sit by and find out. But I do appreciate you coming on, Brian. It's always a pleasure doing this with you, and I can't wait to do next week's show. However, I do have some news in terms of other shows this week. I do leave tomorrow for Denver, everybody. So that means no Wednesday show for me. And also, I will not be able to do my Friday show on Cryptos R Us either because IFC will be going on, and I have to commentate that instead. So you'll instead be able to find me on the IFCX account commentating the fights. But, however, Blake will have a video on Thursday going over some technical analysis, a little bit quite different actually from what we're doing here today. So make sure you tune into that and you'll be all set. Anything you want to add in, Brian?
I hope you have a good travel over to Denver. And for those who are interested in checking out our stuff, make sure to visit x.com/Santiment feed, all one word, or you can go straight to the platform at app.santiment.net. If that's too many words or letters, just go to our X page and you'll see our link tree with everything you need to find, and we'll help you out however we can.
Awesome. And you can also find the link to Santiment's X account in both the live chat here, Cast with the Sass just dropped it, and also in the description down below. Same with the link to their website also. So if it's too many words for it and you can't figure out how to spell it, I got you covered. But thank you all for tuning in today. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here. I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I cannot wait to get back here next week and continue on. Until then, huddle on and stay safe.